for joining us.
Hello.
Poor Trevor has got the allergies voice, so we're going to try to save her voice today as much as possible. But we're so excited. We have a great guest with us, Dean, who's going to give us an update about a project. But before we get started, Trevor, you know what I realized? That we talked about building the last show, and we're going to talk about building again on this show. We went from residential custom building, and now we're going to talk about industrial space. What a shift. But all are so important to our community and what this does really for residents and economic development in our area. I kind of wanted to give a brief background of the Carolinas Gateway Partnership and how I've gotten to know Dean and why he's here with us today. So for those of you who don't know, Carolinas Gateway Partnership is the economic development kind of engine that really services Rocky Mount, Edgecombe County, and the town of Tarboro. The county of Nash County is actually separate, but we work with that team over there. Susan Phelps a great deal, and they do a wonderful job too. But this is really kind of a partnership of municipalities and the private sector, so a lot of businesses who are very motivated to bring in industry to our community, which helps grow our community and provides tax dollars and really is part of what we do with real estate, you know, by bringing more people in.
Absolutely. And people need houses and places to live.
That's right. That's right.
Feeds. Yes. Wonderful.
Well, I just do some very part-time consulting with them, but because of that, I've been afforded the opportunity to meet great people like Dean with the Riddell Group. So Dean, I'm so excited to have you here with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys.
Yay! So Dean is with the Riddell Group, and you may not have heard of Riddell, but you have probably heard of the big project that he is working on. So the Rocky Mount Industrial Village is new, obviously, and it's going to be located on the corner of Thomas Betts and Peel Road. And you know, when I rode by this morning, there's a lot happening over there.
Yeah, we saw the water going into place, so I'm really appreciative that that's getting done.
Yay! So, Dean, tell us a little bit about you first and your career, and then we'll kind of transition into what you're doing here in Rocky Mount.
Awesome, yeah. So I started in real estate about 7 years ago.
Okay. Real estate, not like us though, right?
No. I actually started with a multifamily building in
Okay.
Birmingham, Alabama, which is where I live. And then I started with that and then kind of segued throughout the years to figuring out I really enjoy development. So
What is it you love about it?
I love the whole project aspect of it and it having an end date. So you work really hard to get the deal, and then you finish the project, and then you kind of on to the next one.
And development is really about vision, right? So you're able to see a tract of land and think, wow, this would be good here, right?
Yes, you have to work your way up to that. I started with buying really old buildings that had good bones, completely gutting them, and then redoing them.
That's so good.
So that's how I learned, and then I went to greenfields buildings.
And when you say old buildings, just for our viewers, you mean in this case you bought multifamily housing, or you bought warehouse space?
I bought
warehouse space. Okay,
Yeah.
which is what we're going to really be talking about today.
Yes.
Okay, so continue on. So you like development?
Yeah, so I like development. So there's this huge demand that I've recognized in the market for buildings sub 100,000 square feet. You don't have a lot of developers kind of doing that.
Everybody wants to build a 500,000 square foot
Yeah.
building, yes.
I call them bombers, buildings that are over 150,000 square feet.
Okay.
So what developers normally do is they'll build a large building like that, hope to get a big tenant, and if they don't get a big tenant, they chop the building up and put a lot of smaller tenants in.
Hack it out.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm kind of starting with single tenant occupancy small buildings in mind, which is very different from a lot of people. And that's kind of the product I'm going to bring to the Thomas Betts Peel Road side.
Well, it's smart. I think you can cater to a lot more people that way and a lot more markets, right?
Yeah, for sure. The first building I'm putting up is a 45,000 square foot metal building. And then the second building is a 20,000, and then there's going to be three 30,000s.
That's just on the south side.
On the
Actually,
south
can we
side.
show a map of that real quick, if you don't mind? So when you're driving from the hospital to Wesleyan Boulevard, if you happen to drive this morning, you'll see a lot of construction vehicles down there. But if you are, this would be on the right side. So that darker brown is the one you're doing first.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the 45,000 square foot. And then if you want to flip over to the other image, if you don't mind. There you go. And this is kind of a proposal for the north side.
Yes. So these are bigger buildings. They'll be build to suit, and there's two buildings, and they're each 100,000 square feet.
Perfect.
Wow.
That's great. So why Rocky Mount? Let's back up a second.
Yeah. So Rocky Mount's really a target area for me because it's got great demographics. It's a good size, and there weren't a lot of buildings in this size range that I saw in the area.
Yeah, hardly any.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think this will fit a need in the community, and the great thing about my product and the wants of the city is they're very aligned. I want full buildings, and this brings new jobs, and it seems like Rocky Mount's really poised to fill both those.
So I'll tell you something that I learned in working with Dean and getting to talk with the city is that this development is called the Rocky Mount Industrial Village, and the Rocky Mount Industrial Village is going to have, or does have now, kind of extensive restrictive covenants. And I think of restrictive covenants in neighborhoods, Trevor. I mean, we talk about them where, for a silly example, this one doesn't allow chickens, or this one does allow chickens. Well, I didn't even think about that translated, not the example of chickens, but restrictive covenants translates into industrial space as well, where you're not going to have any animal processing, you're not going to have any, high flammable chemicals. I mean, there was kind of an extensive list of what would not be included in this area, and on top of that, what would be required. So, exterior lighting, nice landscaping, fencing, if you have something in the yard. These are just a few that come to mind that, when you ride by large warehouse space, sometimes it's attractive and sometimes it's not. But this is such a prominent location.
Yeah, and we like those restrictive covenants because we when we do a partnership, we see ourselves as a team with the community, and we're a long-term hold. So we want it to look nice. We want the best of the best in this industrial park.
And that's in the city of Rocky Mount, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you're working closely with the city.
Closely with the city, and we do a lot with Carolina Gateways Partnership. That's how I
In
met
fact,
Joe.
he's having lunch today with Javaris Walker, because this is Jay Kelly's ward again. So, I mean, it's just a really nice relationship. So the city kind of had to add input and bless what could and would not be allowed in this area.
Yeah, and we worked with them too. I bring some knowledge from the private side, and then the city kind of knows what's local, and it's a good team when we come together.
That's great.
It's been such a cool learning opportunity to hang out with Dean, yeah. So Dean is here all week, and we have been meeting with several of the larger industries in the area. So, for example, Cummings, we met with yesterday, and I didn't, you'll kind of share with the audience why it was important for us to meet with an industry that has $1.3 million 1.3 million square feet. Why would they need a partnership with someone that's doing 45,000 square feet? That was great to learn.
Yeah, so Cummins, massive employer in the area, great company. You never know what things they could need. So a 45,000 square foot building in the grand scheme of things seems pretty small compared to 1.3 million square feet. But they have special projects, sometimes overflow, recalls, they're always kind of looking for stuff like
I
that.
didn't even think about that,
Yeah,
Trevor. It
so
was super
good.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So, we're always trying to see an angle and kind of help out people in the community.
So what kind of things do you think that you can do with Cummins?
Yeah.
Well, Cummins was just an example, but
Yeah, so the main thing this industrial park is going to cover, there's kind of three industries. So the first one is light manufacturing. The second one is kind of service-oriented businesses. And then the third one is kind of last mile logistics. Logistics usually needs a big space. So because these buildings are a bit smaller, it'll be a little more specialized.
Wow.
yeah. He's just, I just have learned so much because you don't realize how many people, in fact, I talked with two other industries this morning, and they can see a need. They rented space for about 8 months to turn over a different product, and then when that's done, and their client that they rented from didn't even know, right? Like this was it's Campbell Logistics, and they rent from other people as well, just to kind of fill a void to turn over a timeline. It's kind of like when we do a short-term rental for someone just until they can get into their new house. This feels very much the same, and I didn't realize the relationship there.
Yeah, that's really neat. And how about the logistics of Rocky Mount and the location being
Oh,
close
yes.
to 95 and the whole transit, the rail system, right?
Yeah. So the best thing for me, logistics-wise and location-wise for Rocky Mount is its proximity to Raleigh. So it's only 45 minutes to an hour away, which isn't that far in the grand scheme of things. So you could have, your workforce here, your CEOs here, and still be able to kind of be within that Raleigh ecosphere, and it's not that far.
Yeah.
The airport and, yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of talk about the timeline. So obviously we've talked about this morning, if you were to ride by, it looks like a lot's happening. One lane is blocked off because the water is going in. But what is the kind of promise as part of the contract of the timeline that we'll deliver?
Yeah, so some of the promises is once all the drawings and everything's through, we have 1 year to develop it.
Not develop the entire 55 acres,
No,
but
just the first building.
Okay.
But there's some interesting aspects to it because you get a huge cost savings if you do all the grading all at once.
Of course.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and grade that south portion all at once and put in all the infrastructure for the whole park, south portion of the park, at once. So that's a way bigger process than just one building.
Well, that shows your commitment to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Continue on,
right.
Yeah.
And
That's great.
so he's doing a 45,000 square foot spec building, but we've had several meetings with clients who could potentially want, just like we'll think of it as custom, but a build to suit
Yes.
building. So those can obviously be happening simultaneously if someone wants a build to suit.
Yeah.
And is that the Gateway's job is to kind of market these buildings to help
Yes,
fill
yes.
them?
I mean, yes, but I mean, it's something that the more people in our community know, the more people can help spread the word. It's just like on real estate. Sometimes the neighbors of a house for sale are the best marketers for that
Absolutely.
house.
That's great.
This feels very much the same as those partners are great advocates for it too. So anyway, that's why he's actually going to meet with Benton Moss after this to do a podcast on
Great.
King County
You'll
media.
love meeting him. He does such a great job.
Yeah, just to kind of help spread the word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dean, I know we're running out of time.
Yeah.
Was there any other components that I didn't ask you about that I should have asked you about?
Just want to add one more thing. If you're looking for any industrial space, please contact me, Sterling, Carolina Gateways Partnership, or the city. We're more than willing to help. Even if your building doesn't fit the footprints that we showed, we can always customize it. One of the great things about Rocky Mount is that they've been really flexible on the master plan, and that's something I really appreciate because they're willing to work with the layout to try and fit the needs of the community. So I'll give you an example. Although there's 30,000 square foot buildings, if a tenant needed 60 or 65,000, we can kind of make that happen and smush those two 30s together.
So
So,
great.
yeah,
What
it really does
opportunity.
feel like custom home building. It's
Yep.
custom, industrial building of what works for everyone involved.
It's exciting.
And then Sterling's just finding this out right now, but she's going to pick the color that the building's going to be.
Yay!
She's
So-
so
That's
good
fun.
at
That's
that.
fun. That's fun. That's fun. Well, Dean is so obviously he says he's from Alabama, but he is here a lot. So we will certainly have you back when
That'd be great.
we have another thing to talk about on what the next phase is.
Well,
to include.
thank you so much for investing.
I know, in
It's
Rocky Mount.
exciting.
In
Yes.
Rocky Mount, yes. All right, our next show will be back to residential real estate. And in the meantime, thank you, Dean, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
If you have any questions or topics that you would like to make sure we cover, Trevor,
Yes.
we want to try to honor those. So Sandra has agreed to take those emails and she'll send to us as appropriate, but Sandra at WHIGTV.com. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you,
Trevor, I
guys.
hope you have a
Thank
voice
you.
next time we're here. Y'all have a great day.